Hello, my friends. Hope you're doing well. Mike Shreve here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Peaceful Profits Podcast. I'm so excited. It's been a while since I have made one of these. I do apologize for that. I tend to get very focused in on very few things and oftentimes have no problem letting stuff that isn't as important as the thing I'm focusing on slide. So in this case, for the past few months, I have been working very hard on 2 new revenue opportunities for this particular business, plus some other stuff on one of my other companies. And then I'm really working on moving myself out of a lot of the stuff that I do in the day-to-day. So one of the things that got lost in that, because as you know, you only have so much time per day, and the more you focus on something, the faster the end result appears. I mean, that's what it feels like. When you really focus on something, that end date, that end goal, all of a sudden you wake up one day and there it is. And I like to do that. I like to really focus in on what I'm doing. Let the other stuff that's not as important slide. And so it's been a while since I've sent you one of these. I want to make sure that I do that, especially with what happened this last week. So if you're listening to this audio at a different time than when we release it to the email list and stuff, a quick update is that this last week I hired the email agency a few weeks ago, and then this last week was the first time that they sent emails on my behalf to the email list. And for those of you who were on the list, you know that they were pretty bad. I mean, they were... And they were over the top and overhyped, and there was maybe even some racial stuff. And I mean, it was bad. It was, I've made some mistakes in my career. Those emails getting sent to the email list are one of my bigger ones. In situations like this, it's not really the fault of the agency. And I think that's a lesson that's really important for everyone to learn, is that, I'm a huge believer in extreme ownership, that should not have happened. Yes, they had a system in place where they really wouldn't let you approve emails before they send them, and they said you have to trust us, and so we trusted them. Yes, there were promises and under delivery and all that kind of good stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who allowed that system into my business. Okay, so it is my fault, and that's an important lesson for those of you who are thinking of growing a team. I see a lot of entrepreneurs growing teams, and they constantly blame the vendor, they constantly blame the employee, they constantly blame the freelancer, and what happens as a result of that is that they never get the opportunity to learn from the mistake. And so they get in this repetitive cycle where they're hiring and disappointed and hiring and disappointed and hiring and disappointed. By taking responsibility, by taking extreme ownership over the work of other people, you're able to more objectively and accurately analyze what happened so it doesn't happen again. We learned so many lessons this last week, so many lessons that will, over the next decade or so, and this is not an exaggeration, net us millions of dollars in revenue because of the lessons we learned just in this very short time. But if we refused to take that responsibility and we just sloughed it off and said, they're a bad agency or blah, 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 we never would get the opportunity to grow from this occurrence. So I wanted to share that message with you. It's really important, something I learned a long time ago. But even more than that is I want to share with you some of the lessons, some of the reminders that we as a team had, that I myself had, especially when it comes to short-term versus long-term marketing strategies. So the main issue with the emails specifically that were sent this last week is that they were very short-term focused. And that was a very big difference from how we've been emailing you in the past, which is to try and really focus on long-term relationship building. So I want to break down the differences because in every business, there is a time to engage in short-term marketing activities. There is. Now, not all of them. Some of them I recommend you stay away from entirely, and we'll talk about those in a second. But there are times where you need cash, and that's what short-term marketing does, is it brings in quick cash. But the cost of short-term marketing is what's called the 15-85 rule. In other words, 15% of everyone who's going to buy something from you will do so in the next 90 days or within 90 days of receiving information from you. So let's say you are selling a book, right? It's one thing we love to help people do, write books and sell them. Somebody buys your book. In the first 90 days, 15% of all the people who are going to buy whatever's next, your signature offer, your premium offer, etc., whatever's next after that book, 15% will buy in 90 days. After the 90 days, the 85% will buy something. Of those of who will buy, right? You're not going to have 100% people who buy your book buy your next thing, but let's say that there's going to be 100 people who, after they buy your book, 100 of them will end up buying something from you eventually. Within 90 days, 15 of those 100 will do so. After 90 days, 85 will do so. What does that mean? It means you are 7 times more profitable after 90 days. 7 times more profitable. Just think about that for a second. That's the difference between short-term marketing, which is constantly trying to push to maximize those 15 sales, right? Let's get the money now, get the money now, get the money now, get the money now, versus nurture marketing, branding marketing, long-term relationship nurturing, multi-offer sequential marketing. We'll talk a little bit about some of all this. These are things that help you to build the long-term relationships, work with people over, in some cases, decades, and really maximize the earnings that you can earn from the marketing efforts that you do deploy. So for example, just a really quick case study, if you go through the effort to write a book, to get it published, to put your ideas together, maybe you hire people to help you put it together, it is a very rational and logical thing to want to maximize the return on that marketing asset, right? A book is a marketing asset. You write it once, you can have it forever. 20 years from now, you can still, as long as it wasn't written about some trend or fad, you can, an evergreen style book, you can hand it out when you do speaking gigs, you can put it in a funnel. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can do marketing with a book. The problem is that what happens when people write a book is they'll focus too much on short term, which eats into the long term, right? So they put all this effort into a marketing asset, which ends up being cut short in its potential to bring in revenue, to bring in profit, to bring in customers, to bring in clients, because of what I think is sort of a propensity within the internet marketing space in general. Most internet marketers, because they are bootstrapped, okay, because they have the pressure of not being funded, in other words, they're having to use their own money to make money, then put that money back in the business, and kind of steamroll and bootstrap their way to the level they want to get to, they are constantly using and teaching short-term methods because that's what they need to do. They need to extract the maximum cash right now, regardless of the long-term effects, regardless of whether that's eating into the 85% of sales that will happen later. What I hope I can help you to understand and really think about in your own business today is how much of your marketing mix is currently short-term versus long-term. Because again, you do need short-term tactics at once in a while. Bills have to be paid. We can't all live in the world of Silicon Valley startups where they can, lose millions of dollars a year for 5, 6, 7 years before people start thinking it's maybe not a good idea to pump money into it anymore. If you're like me, from day one, you had to bootstrap. So we do, it's easy to kind of be like, ew, internet marketing is gross and everything you do is horrible. And sometimes I feel that way. But you do have to understand there are times and places for short-term marketing. And then, of course, there's always times and places for long-term. Okay, one more story to illustrate, and then we'll talk specifics. One of my earliest mentors really impressed upon me the importance of long-term marketing, and he did it in this way. He was at a seminar. It was his seminar. It was like his sort of mastermind, inner circle, $40,000 a year, high-level consulting offer. And there was, probably 100 people in the room. There was a lot of people in the room. And he did something which has really drilled home to me, and I hope it has the same impact on you. He said, everybody stand up. He made everyone stand up. And he said, remain standing if you've been in my mastermind, my inner circle thing, paying me $40,000 a month for more than a year. And, probably like a third of the room sat down, right? They were all first timers, the first time that they'd ever come there. And so there's maybe like 70 people left. Then he said, remain standing if you've been with me for more than 5 years. And then a bunch of people sat down and maybe half the room was still there, which means half the room had been with him, paying him $40,000 a year for more than 5 years. So we're already at least to $200,000 worth of value, 50 people or so. Then he went to 10, then he went to 15, and the room kept getting smaller and smaller. More and more people were sitting down, more and more people were sitting down. And then he said, stay standing if you've been with me for more than 20 years. And there was like 3 or 4 people still standing. And that was such a powerful example of how to run a real business. Because this particular mentor of mine is very well known. You could say that he is a market leader or a niche leader. And what he went on to then teach after that was the power of lifetime value and the power of spending as much, if not more time on working with people who've already bought something from you than overly focusing on getting new people to buy something from you. And that was a very powerful lesson. It's one of the best ways and easiest ways to make money in your own business, to have the margins you want. We'll talk a little bit about that. But really what we're talking about, when we talk about short-term marketing versus long-term marketing, we're really talking about the difference between getting customers and keeping those customers for as long as possible. Now, sometimes along the way when you do long-term marketing, you do pick up newer customers, but start thinking about the people that you're interacting with, that you're doing work with, and ask yourself, am I spending more time getting new people? Or am I spending more time taking the people I have now and turning them into a 20-year client? Like, think about it for a second. How much stress comes from your current business in the act of getting new buyers? And what if you could not just maintain, but grow your annual revenues by working with the people you already have the people who already know, like, and trust you, the people who you have already been nurturing and developing and delivering and etc. Okay, so let me just give you some brief examples. I can't obviously make a whole list. It would take hours for us to go through every single example, but let's do some short-term examples and then we'll do some long-term examples. A short-term example, short-term marketing, is what I call say whatever copywriting. So this is, for example, in the email, one of the emails I got sent out this last week, which I didn't even see it until it hit the inbox, which I don't typically get upset about things, but that one blew my lid right off. There was a couple of bad ones, right? There was one that was very racially insensitive. There was also one, I'm not even going to repeat that one. There was one that was, it said push button marketing to, or it's like push button system or something like push button to $100,000 a month or something like that. That is your very typical say whatever it takes, lowest common denominator, just get the click, it doesn't matter, maximize open rates style copywriting. And there are a lot of companies who have no problem with that. I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this for 14 years. Those companies have very large and expensive legal departments. Okay, that's not me trying to make a dig on anyone. That's a part of the say whatever copywriting world that nobody talks about, because often say whatever copywriting is something that junior or beginning copywriters do, right? They'll listen to a Gary Halbert tape, or they'll listen to, some of these earlier copywriters when things were a lot less regulated, when things were a lot less litigious, although to be fair, Gary Halbert did spend time in federal prison. So take that with a grain of salt. I mean, no disrespect, but it's important that when you take information from people, you consider the source. And so a lot of this is sort of like the circular thinking of internet marketing. It's like, well, that guy said to do it, so I should. Well, yeah, well, maybe that guy lived in a different time. Maybe, the situation was different. The market was different. People weren't as jaded. People weren't as skeptical. There weren't as many alphabet agencies. And also, did that guy spend time in prison? Right. So it's a mistake that a lot of marketers make, which is do whatever it takes to get the click. Say whatever it takes to get the sale. Worry about refunds later. I've been in part of multiple masterminds and heard from a lot of very smart people, and they say, yeah, if your refund rate isn't above 20%, you're not pushing hard enough. And I'm thinking to myself, that's insane. That is genuinely building a business where you will always have to be getting new customers because you are destroying customers from within. Right? Jay Abraham, what does he say? He always says there's 3 ways to grow a business. Get more customers, get them to buy more from you, so pay more, or get them to buy more often from you. Have you noticed that 2 of the 3 have nothing to do with getting more customers, but they're actually taking the people you have already have in your world, getting them to buy more stuff from you and getting them to buy more often? That should tell you everything you need to know about growing a business and why things like say anything copywriting are really destructive to the long-term 85% of people who are going to buy from you 90 days later, the LTV increase, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, a lot of marketers these days, they just don't measure this stuff, which is why they don't know. They're only measuring that immediate cash return. And say whatever copywriting does generate immediate cash returns. It does. It works. That's why people keep using it. The problem is there's, look, I've consulted genuinely, sincerely, and literally thousands of businesses over the past 14 years, from $150 million all the way down to still trying to make their first dollar. The number of people who actually measure LTV is shockingly small. I would say less than 1% of all businesses are accurately or even trying to measure the lifetime value of the people who work with them. Again, lifetime value, think about that example I just shared with you. Someone spending $30,000, $40,000 a year for 20 years. That's a very valuable customer. It's a very valuable client. That's what we want in Peaceful Profits. I don't want to be spending the rest of my life begging people to come to my world and buying my stuff and please buy my stuff. I don't like it. That's not peaceful to me. What I do like is a small handful of clients that get big delivery, you get big results, and you pay big money to be a part of that world. And we go on for years and years and years. That's my dream. That's my MO. That's how I run things. So say whatever copywriting. Look at what you're doing. Are you writing that headline because you think it's going to crush your, I hate that. It's going to crush open rates, bro. Or are you writing the headline because you think it will actually intrigue them, they will actually open it, and then in the email you can really deliver some good stuff, right? It doesn't mean don't use copywriting. I use copywriting all the time. The subject line for the email that promotes this podcast was absolutely meant to get you to open the email. I'm not going to purposely sabotage myself, but there is a difference, and you have to find the difference. Where is your line on that spectrum of copywriting? All right, another example of short term would just be bait and switch type stuff. A lot of people saying something is a free training when in fact it's not a free training. It's just a pitch fest. That is a great way to kill long-term marketing hopes, dreams, but nobody measures it. What do they measure? They measure, how well did my webinar do today? How many sales did I squeeze out of that machine? I am telling you, there is so much more money on the long tail and on the back end. And here's one of the reasons why. People are skeptical. When you think of prospects these days, you need to think of them as a rock that needs to be slowly chipped away over time. Because it's also a fairly fragile rock. So you can't just come in with a sledgehammer and think you're going to, carve out the, a statue of David or something. You have to chip away slowly. They've been burned. They're very fragile. At the time of this recording, the world is crazy. You have to understand that when you're prospecting to human beings. And if you're prospecting in one of the big three, health, wealth, relationships, you're 10 years behind the gate in terms of thinking that what you're selling, people are going to be like, wow, I've never heard of that before. It's saturated, all right? We don't have a lot of opportunity these days to make easy sales. Eugene Schwartz talks about the customer awareness spectrum. We don't have a lot of room these days to be able to say, this is something you've never heard of. They probably have. And if they haven't, they've heard of something so similar that they just assume what you're talking about is the thing that they already know. That's the great majority of most of the big three markets that most people are operating in. Yeah, you might have your sub-niche and all that kind of stuff, but still, we're talking about spillover and all that kind of stuff. So the point that I'm trying to make here is when you start getting into bait and switch, it really is it just disappoints people. It's not impressive. You can squeeze short-term profits out of it, and people do. But here's my friendly warning. You are cutting yourself off at the knees. For those back-end sales, for those long-term sales, it's not what you're looking for. Now, I will give you one caveat because, we operate a couple of our businesses in really jaded markets. Peaceful Profits is one of them. You can't always use customer feedback as the sort of determinant as to whether you are doing any of these. You have to be able to look at yourself and say, am I doing that? I'll give you an example. If somebody buys my book, we've had the email where it's like, I read your book and I'm not rich yet. I want my money back. You lied to me. You can't really take that and say, yeah, that, I need to stop writing books because their books are bait. It can't really live your life based off of the random support email request. So a lot of this short-term and long-term marketing stuff is about looking at what is the intent behind the activity. So are you doing this because you need cash now? Are you doing this because I'm going to trick them into getting me money? Are you doing this because this is going to totally crush bro and I'm going to totally make tons of money off this? If you start getting into that mentality, you're probably doing short-term marketing. If you're thinking about, what I'm going to do? Here's something I think about all the time. I want people to show up to the sales calls with my sales team already trusting everything. That doesn't always happen. You're working with people at scale. It's not all perfect. But whenever I'm doing marketing, that's what I'm looking for. Am I building trust? Well, some people take a while to trust, right? They've had bad experiences in the past where they were just raised to trust slowly, trust but verify, right? And that's where the long tail comes in. Are you sending content to people to help them trust that you can actually help them? Or are you just pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching? Because I'm telling you, pitching does not increase trust. It does not. But content does. We're working on a new service. We've seen some really incredible results from this already. We've got a few people in beta and we're adding a couple more. And here's the whole process. We come in, we interview you for an hour and a half. There's like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's just like a little interview. We've got really great interview people. And we record the interview. And then we take all that, we chunk it up into a bunch of different content pieces, and then we just drip that content over the course of a month on LinkedIn and Facebook, and that's it. And what happens is, if you're a friend or connected on Facebook or LinkedIn, every day it's a little piece of content, little piece of content, little piece of content, little piece of content, little idea here, little idea there. And we have found that the trust factor, when people are frequently exposed to that content, we have found that they end up showing up to our clients' sales process unbelievably more prepared. These are lay down, order taking style sales, which I think most of us, that's the dream, right? It doesn't happen with short-term marketing. With short-term marketing, what you're doing is you're attracting, for example, the email that was sent this last week, push button system for $100,000 a month. Even if people are intrigued by that, they're skeptical. Every time you make huge claims, what increases? Not trust. Trust doesn't increase on a big claim. Skepticism increases. So we're in an age now where the old-timey, go for the fences with the headline is actually biting people in the backside because we now have to find this range of believable promises, believable claims. Otherwise, we're, again, cutting ourselves off at the knees. Okay, next, and this is I'll just one more short one, and then we'll talk about some long-term stuff. The fake scarcity, come on, let's not do that anymore. Fake scarcity is a personal pet peeve of mine, especially with digital products. But there's also fake scarcity in the way you present yourself. So fake scarcity in saying things like, this must be purchased by tomorrow or your life is going to fall apart and your kids will leave you and your wife will leave you and no one will love you. And just that kind of creating scarcity where there isn't actually any scarcity ends up, again, hurting you in the long term. Because think about this. If you say to someone, if you don't buy it today, horrible things are going to happen to you, what do you think that person is going to do when they don't buy it today? They're going to think, well, my window of opportunity is over. And what are you supposed to do with that? I mean, you could try it again and see, this is what a lot of people do, and that's why they burn their email list. Then like a week later, they say it again. Like, no, you really got to buy it now. If you don't buy it now, then really bad things. And then it just gets to this point where any reasonable person is going to say, you know what, I don't think this is right for me. When you can we are living in an incredible age where direct response, all the tactics are on the table. Most of them you can find for free on YouTube. There's a lot of teachers, there's a lot of courses. I mean, this is a really wild time to be alive. But because these tactics are so overused, many of them are creating doubt rather than removing doubt, which is the purpose of marketing. The purpose of marketing is to tell people about your product in such a way, not just that they get excited to buy it, but that they see that it is the solution to their problems, and they see why they should have little to no doubt, or in other words, that they should have confidence, right? Little to no doubt. The absence of doubt is confidence. The confidence to purchase the thing that you are selling. That's what marketing is for. Then they have that confidence, they walk into a sales conversation, and that's how sales should work. What a lot of people are doing in the way that they're marketing is they're increasing skepticism. They may get people very excited about what they're doing, but then you have a skeptic showing up to the call. And things like fake scarcity are one of those issues that increase skepticism. Okay, now I'll give you a little note, because I know some of you are going to say, well, but Mike, you use scarcity all the time. And we do. So at the beginning of every month, we put out a call for our done-for-you offers. We have a couple. We have funnel. We have, now we're going to have these new awesome content-based offers. We've got, we can help you ghostwrite your book offers. We do cohorts for various things. But those are actual deadline driven. So for example, we as a company can truly only take a certain number of funnels per month, and they do truly typically sell out within 2 or 3 days. So again, we're at this point where there are times for short-term marketing tactics. If we want to get a rush of done-for-you sales because we finished all our done-for-you stuff last month, and we now have, let's say 2 or 3 openings this month, we will send an email that says, hey, we've got 2 or 3 new openings. We can only take 2 or 3. Typically when we sell this email, we sell out within a couple of days. Book your call as quickly as possible. This is a first come, first serve. Thanks, see you later, bye. But it's not the kind of thing where, it's a digital course and you can only buy it on this page and you'll never see it again if you don't buy in the next minute and a half, and all that kind of stuff. We don't really engage in that. We have found that you can make you can make a lot more money if you do other tactics. Now, there's one other thing as well, which is like fire sales or, discounts or things like that. I don't consider fire sales or discounts to be fake scarcity. For example, on some of our upsell pages, we take stuff that's like $1,500 and we mark it down by 50% or more and say, hey, look, if you want to buy it now, it's 50% off. Just like you would for a Black Friday sale, Cyber Monday sale, holiday sales. That to me that's just a sale. Nobody is looking at that and saying you're a liar, you're a cheat. They're like, oh, it's sales. Like we've all grown up in that world. We've grown up in that whole, all the way back to the JCPenney catalog, right? I mean, so that's not something to worry about if you engage in that. What you do have to be careful of, though, is if you run the sale, you don't go back on your word. So if you say only on this page, in this moment right now, can you actually get this for 50% off, then it needs to be only on that page in that moment right then, 50% off. And I also, I recommend altering the offer. So your 50% offer shouldn't look exactly like your 100% offer. It's just less price. Make some alterations, make it a truly different offer, etc. Okay, so those are the short-term ones. Again, we can make a whole list. Really what you're trying to look for is what is your intent behind it? Are you just trying to get some quick cash? And look, sometimes you have to. Sometimes payroll has to be hit and you do need some short-term cash stuff. Just understand that when you're engaging in short-term, you are, in fact, there is an opportunity cost, there is a long-term cost to the long-term, to the overall LTV. Some people get turned off by it, etc., etc. Okay, next is some long-term tactics that you can engage in. And I love long-term stuff. Maybe one of these days I'll do a podcast on just long-term. Okay, so number one of my favorites is to understand that if somebody buys something from you, they will very likely buy the next solution to what you have to offer. Because if the thing they bought is good, in this world of coaching and done for you and agencies and freelancers, right, in the help business, this isn't true for e-commerce, but in the help business, where you're offering services, coaching, etc., if they buy something from you, they should get a result, right? Some kind of result. Well, every result in the help business creates new problems. Every result in the help business creates new problems. So what does that mean? It means, for example, let's say that you buy one of my books and you do what says, let's say you buy the One Book Millions Method book and you execute on it and you finish a book and you're like, oh my gosh, I just wrote a book. This is great. I achieved something from this $5 purchase. Well, now guess what? Now you've got a problem. What am I going to do with this book? How am I going to turn this book into actual money? That's a new problem, right? Now you got a great solution, but now you have a new problem. And this is where so many people get it wrong, is that the person who just wrote that book, this new problem that they have, they're going to solve the problem, whether it's with me or with someone else. So when you look at, okay, hold on a second, what is the new problem that my products create? You want to create products, services, and offers that create new, good problems, right? Oh my gosh, my relationship is so great now. Now what do I do? Oh my gosh, I'm feeling in the best shape of my life. Now what do I do? Oh my gosh, I got my first client. Now what do I do it? That right there, that moment of understanding what the outcomes are that you're delivering and then what the new problems are is where, if you stop focusing on short-term marketing and start thinking about how can I talk to those people, what happens when they achieve that result? Is there a way I can find out if they achieve that result? And then are there things that I can do to get them to move to the next offer? In your business, do you have a way to catch people who are on the new part of their, you can call it journey, but like once they get that solution and they start searching for solutions to the new problem, do you have something for them? Can you catch them? Because here's what exists now. The person who bought my book and then wrote a book and is so happy with themselves that they wrote the book, guess what they do to me? They trust me. They trust me. And in this day and age of overly skeptical, jaded buyers, if you can get people to trust you in that way, the amount of revenue and profit you can generate off of trust is 20, 30, 40 times more than any marketing tactic, right? That manipulates people to trust you. If you can get them to trust you based off results, they're lay down sales for whatever the next thing might be. But you have to ask yourself, are you engaging in long-term marketing? One of the ways to check yourself is, do I know what the new problems are from this offer that is getting people results? Now, for those of you who don't have an offer that's getting results, well, step one is to put together an offer that gets people results. Don't get ahead of yourself. But it's okay to think down the road, but don't get distracted. Get an offer that gets results first, okay? Another thing that you can do for long-term is content marketing. Now, for the most part, I myself personally have stuck just with emails and, as you can see, the occasional podcast. That seems to be fine. That gets us more clients than we could possibly ever want or need. However, that email and podcast, very occasional podcast, let's be honest, is driven by a tremendous amount of advertising spend. And I'm learning more and more, especially with how difficult it is becoming with advertising spend, that more and more people are actually dropping out of paid traffic, looking for alternatives. It's why we're putting together this incredible offer. We're going to put you on podcasts and get LinkedIn and do interviews and create content for you. It's going to be amazing. So the question isn't necessarily, are you emailing your list? Because there is an issue of reach. What you're really trying to do is reach as many people as possible, as often as possible. I'm going to sound very goofy. I don't actually know how this is, don't actually know how you pronounce this, but there's something called filial imprinting, which is from the world of studying animal behavior. And it's basically, you've seen the YouTube videos where the duck thinks the pig is the mom. Well, it's because of this concept called filial imprinting, or maybe it's not called that, it could be called something else. But the idea is that most animal brains are wired to feel closeness, like emotional closeness, to identify closeness with other human beings by proximity. Now, what are we talking about? It's incredible if you think about it. Just being present creates an emotional connection. Just being present, just being available, just being within reaching distance creates connection. Now, if we pull this over to marketing, and we pull this over to trying to build trust, and we pull this over to trying to build a tribe and trying to get people to connect with us, think about it. If you're just there more often than your competitor, if you're just there more often than the other options, if you use frequency of touch points, then you don't have to even be very good at marketing. You don't have to be very good at the content that you're producing. The frequency will take care of the long-term relationship. Now, obviously, you do want to be, get good at your content. You do want to try and help people when you share content and things like that. But frequency is very important. Just look at Grant Cardone. Just look at Gary Vaynerchuk. Just look at any YouTube. It's not about the algorithm. See, the algorithm is built that, yeah, maybe it supports frequency, but the reason it supports frequency is why? Because human beings react to frequency. The algorithms are built on human reaction, not on an arbitrary, we will reward the YouTuber who can post the most. It's which YouTuber is getting the most traction. It's the ones who post frequently because human beings react to frequency. Emotionally. You can look in your own life and just look at how many of your connections, how many of your decisions, how many of your buying sort of standards are based off of proximity, convenience, frequency. I know you because I see you, right? Your workplace friends. How'd they become your workplace friends? Because they were there. The people at your church, why are they your friends? Because they're there every Sunday. A lot of these people you wouldn't have picked out of a crowd, be honest. But because you see them all the time, you build the relationship. It's just a human nature. It's how we work. And so when you understand that, then you can understand that long-term marketing is about showing up. And showing up for more than, I apologize, but I have to call it this way because it helps me to be averse to it, but booty call emails, where you're just there trying to extract something rather than actually showing up, adding, and look, I hate to say the word adding value because I think there's a lot of people who have tried that before. They're like, okay, I'm gonna write this really long thing. It doesn't have to be this long form. You don't need to do like what I'm doing right now, a 45-minute podcast. Good grief. I need to learn how to do 10-minute podcasts. This is not something to replicate. This is a problem. I just can't help but talk this much. What you have to do is find a good balance that's sustainable for you that you can do over the long term. Or, shameless plug here, hire us when our service launches. We'll do it all for you. But we are finding more and more that platforms like LinkedIn, even platforms like Facebook, not your personal profile, but even the business page, is just consistently showing up day after day after day with little tidbits, not super long posts. It doesn't have to be genius. Is increasing presence, right? We talk about omnipresence. You've probably taken courses where they teach about paid traffic, omnipresence, and retargeting and all that kind of good stuff. Most of these platforms already have that built in. Email already has it built in. Everybody checks their email every single day. So you can be in the inbox, you can be on the LinkedIns, you can be on the Facebook, etc. So now, it does not mean you need to be getting crazy about social media. Okay, I'm going to tell you in a bunch of the experiments that we've been running recently, even if you don't have something like we have where we interview you for an hour and a half and then cut that up into a bunch of little mini segments and turn it into content and stuff like that, even if we don't have that, you can get an app called Buffer. It's free. Connect your social media accounts. I know that when you wake up, you check your phone anyways. So when you check your phone, just pop off a thought. And if you just do that every single day, there's ways that you can schedule in Buffer. So if you have 10 thoughts, you can write 10 different thoughts and then schedule them out over the next 10 days so that you've got all 10 days squared away. I've gotten it to the point where I've got to post twice a day just because my thoughts keep coming and coming. So you don't, this isn't about hustle, right? I think a lot of people get concerned, like, oh no, Mike's saying I got to post often. You don't have to post every day. I mean, that's pretty insane. That's quite a schedule to try and keep up. And consistency, 100% perfection. I think Brendan, who I love, I got to work with Brendan Burchard a couple of years back in 2016. He posted the other day something like, I can't remember if it was 1,500 or if it was 5,000. He's done like either 1,500 or 5,000. It's probably closer to 5,000 to be honest. 5,000 posts, unbroken, every single day. I mean, he's a machine. I remember trying to spend a couple days with him, and it was just like, okay, I'm done. I mean, he's a machine, right? So it doesn't have to be that intense. But just looking at your own marketing efforts, are you even doing anything to have continued conversations with the people that are in your business, the customers, the prospects? A lot of why webinars are failing is because nobody's doing long-term nurturing to the leads. They do short-term fake scarcity tactics on the webinar, and that turns people off. But what they don't know is that the 1585 rule says that of the people that closed on your webinar, there's 7 times more who are just waiting to hear from you 90 days from now for you to say something that clicks. And that's one of the signs of long-term marketing, which is, are you thinking in weeks or months and years? Because if you're thinking in months and years, you're probably engaging in long-term marketing. And long-term marketing, like I said, 7+X% higher returns for essentially the same marketing campaign, same marketing asset. So these are just some things to think about. I wanted to share with you today. I do apologize, this was such a long one. Hopefully some of this was helpful and you got something out of it. It was a really good reminder for us this week to have the experience of working with that email agency, seeing that they were really still stuck in short-term marketing, and to have the juxtaposition. Like, it was quite shocking. We make our own mistakes. I've sent emails that aren't great. We do sometimes need short-term capital when we're growing our team this rapidly. I get it. But it was really interesting to have an outsider who really didn't consider long-term at all and was going for the hardcore push for short-term gain. And it was really interesting to see those results marked against our particular list, who is, to be frank, used to fairly consistent long-term marketing practices. Again, sometimes we do short-term stuff every once in a while. You always do when you're growing a business. But for the most part, we typically do long-term style stuff. And so it was really interesting to see the reaction to those emails because it was such a shock to the system, to the, you could call it community, but to the tempo we had set. And what do you think happened? Big unsubscribes. Probably lost a few relationships that could have been worth, who knows? Who knows how much a relationship can be worth? It's so important in marketing. If you get someone into your world, as marketing costs go up, you need to take better care of the few people that are buying into your stuff, of the few people that are, paying you, that are following you with a saturation and so many different voices. You don't need to bend over backwards and make your life horrible and hustle, hustle, hustle till you die. But the idea is that the days of churn and burn emails, like 2012 Warrior Forum type stuff, it's not over. I don't think it'll ever be over because it does work temporarily, but there is just so much more money in long-term marketing, in nurture, in the 90-day concept, in understanding that if you do good work, it actually creates more problems which you can solve, and that allows you to extend the lifetime of your interactions with certain clients and customers so you can keep them for longer, and then that increases your lifetime value and etc. So anyways, hopefully this has been helpful. If you would like us to help to build a machine, to build an asset, to build a marketing campaign which allows you to have an email list of buyers that you can nurture, that you can grow, to help you come up with offer ideas for understanding this concept of once somebody has a problem solved, they now have a new problem, to elongate LTV. If you would like our help, we have do-it-yourself options, done-with-you options, done-for-you options. All you have to do is go to peacefulprofits.com/call, book a call with us, and we would love to have a chat. We've got a lot of opportunities and offers that we can help you with. Thank you so very much for sticking with me through this last week. I do sincerely apologize. That was a very big learning lesson for me. It's important as a business owner to make sure that you are doing it the way that you want to do it. For us at Peaceful Profits, that's such a core tenet to how we think about our business. Why I fire clients quickly. It's why, we fired the email agency pretty fast after we saw, there's a lot of people who run businesses and they tolerate a lot of stuff and then they're quite miserable. I just learned to not tolerate stuff and I love my business. It's funny how that works, but it's really, really important that for you as the chief salesperson in your business, that you are mindful of short-term, long-term, but ultimately mindful of, is this how I want to sell my stuff? If it isn't, guess what? You don't have to do it, especially if you're thinking long-term, right? One of the great things about trading long-term for short-term is it's really simple. You just keep showing up and helping people. That's how you be good at long-term. And it's really effective. It is longer, right? So if you're needing money today, you're going to have to just accept the fact that you got to do some pretty hardcore marketing. But if you're willing to be patient, if you're willing to play the long game, you can really simplify your business and just play the long-term relationship game. And it's really, really profitable. Okay, that's enough for reels this time. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.